Welcome back to the Predictable Revenue Podcast. I'm your host, Collin Stewart, and today I'm joined by Imants Zudans. He's the co-founder and ex-CEO of Molport. We got an interesting story to tell today. Welcome to the Predictable Revenue Podcast, where sales leaders teach you what's working for them so you can build it yourself. Imants, welcome to the show.
Hi, nice to join you, Collin.
I'm excited to have you on. This is a product market fit story, but kind of told from a slightly different angle. Typically, I'll talk to founders in their kind of in the 0 to 1 phase, or maybe that kind of 1 to 5 phase. But we're approaching this one, you've got a little bit of hindsight. And so I don't want to spoil that, but why don't we talk about where you got the idea from Molport?
Actually, I wasn't the one who got the idea for Molport, just for clarity. I had a co-founder, Jānis Woršlais. He's a serial entrepreneur. I started multiple businesses and has a large construction business doing flooring internationally. But I returned from studies in US to Latvia. At that time, it was popular, 2005, 2006, after Latvia joined the European Union. Economy here was booming, and a lot of folks like me studying abroad returned home and looked what to do. So I applied for several jobs, got a call to be invited to an interview, something unspecified. Had the interview on Thursday at 11, was hired by 12:30 the same day, was on the first business trip to Oxford, UK on Sunday. Essentially, yes, Jānis had the idea to do something in the space of chemical reagents, had visited Latvian Organic Synthesis Institute, a prominent institution for drug discovery here in Latvia. And they discussed that, there are suppliers. There might be suppliers as close as Germany or Finland. They want to buy some chemicals for research from them, but they can't buy because that's a new client for the company. They ask for prepayment, and then universities and institutions can't do that. Company doesn't want to risk for small clients, essentially. So there is a need to get a reagent for science, for some very important experiments probably. But the trade doesn't happen because two parties don't know each other. So there was a friction, very obvious friction, and he wanted to solve that. The idea wasn't mine, but I was hired to build this company. Initially, I joined as a product manager, and then gradually transitioned into the role of CEO.
Interesting. And so help me understand the pain point here, because I think I follow, but I want to make sure I understand it correctly. If a private company wanted to buy a reagent because they don't have an existing relationship, the terms weren't very good, or they just wouldn't sell to them?
It was Wild West, so to say, for chemical reagent trading. Suppliers kind of got the idea that internet is probably good way how to spread the catalog. And there were several sites where you could list your products. And there were thousands of suppliers or entities pretending to be suppliers, listing all kinds of chemicals. One example was, for example, one supplier in China listed many products, and one of them was 1 kilo of a compound that NASA tested as a rocket fuel and decided that it's too unstable. So if that company would have that compound in their warehouse, there would be no warehouse, essentially. So it was kind of Wild West. You couldn't understand who is the real supplier, who is not. There were genuinely wider access to chemical reagents possible if one was willing to kind of look through the options and call up maybe and risk a bit. I mean, significantly, it was 10 times, more than 10 times the usual supply of reagents. And those long-tail reagents are very interesting, but transacting came with high risk and uncertainty.
And I imagine this is something that if you're buying a particular reagent, you want to make sure you get exactly what you were looking for, or the consequences could be expensive, possibly dangerous. And so, with all of these risky and kind of challenging to get chemicals and reagents, you decided to create effectively Amazon for chemicals?
Yes, the initial business models that were considered were several, and the Amazon model was not our first choice. But I had just come back from US, where I had seen how Google appeared, how online shopping appeared, how initially it was a lot of strange suppliers also, that bait and switch tactics and whatnot. But at the time that I returned, all of that was already reliable. So in a way, they say that, some people live in the future. I had lived in the future. I had returned here, and most of the suppliers are from Eastern Europe, Russia, Ukraine, China also. And at that time, they had no experience with shopping online. I mean, some, but not all people. So they couldn't understand that to Western clients, this way of doing sketchy business was something that they maybe tolerated, but certainly was not acceptable. So I saw that, and I suggested, well, let's try that business model. It kind of makes sense. You can aggregate supplier base, make one portal where to search an order, and that's how you build the business.
How did you go about validating, testing to see if the idea would work?
We built the first portal maybe in months, a few months certainly, not very long. But already at that time, it was early 2007, I knew enough that a lot of companies were building these startup products, investing a couple years into building something, then buying big billboards and newspaper ads. And then a lot of them went bust because they didn't have a strategy for what if they place this ad in New York Times and nothing happens, essentially. What we did at Molport was there was a small team building the website, the portal, but one of our co-founders was the type of company that was a ideal customer for us. So they helped us with feedback. They were one of our first customers, and they introduced us to also other chemists. So what we did is, without the website, flashy material sales or anything, we simply asked scientists, give us the list of products that you need. And just for reference, that is sometimes hundreds to thousands of products. And we would distribute the list to all the people in our office. And we would go to supplier catalogs, online databases. We look up all the suppliers for each product. We would compile that into one big Excel where we build some sophisticated calculations how to choose for each compound which supplier we actually select, depending. So in a way, Excel was our first internal system, and it worked for years, actually. And what we did is we simply automated what we were doing. Instead of waiting for a flashy product and then kind of marketing it, we just asked, hey, give us the job. And they liked how we were doing the job manually and trusted us with next and next and next order, essentially. Even the manual process was already improvement for our clients.
How do you understand if the struggle with buying these chemicals is we can't trust that the company can produce them on time, or that it's even the right substance that we're buying? How did you solve that piece? Because I don't imagine for every chemical and every supplier, you're going to go through a complex testing process. That sounds like a crazy amount of work to be able to just list a product.
Well, it's crazy work for a scientist. Let's say they buy only a couple times a year, and let's say they buy one to few products. Then if there are significant portion of sketchy suppliers, it is quite likely statistically that they will hit a bad supplier. But they will never really know. They might get a product from a supplier that actually is sketchy and recommend that to a colleague, and they will actually get the true experience. So it was very difficult. It was very difficult to recommend a supplier to someone else. But for us, it was the opposite. We were placing many orders to suppliers. So we would place a few orders and we would see the true statistics, right? And so that is one way how we could test if they are reliable. And the next way is that we would go and visit them. For a scientist that only buys reagents this year and maybe not for another 3 years from this supplier, doesn't make sense. But we want to establish a relationship with this supplier, a reseller type of relationship, right? And for us, it totally makes sense. Please show us your warehouse. How do you store compounds? If our order comes in, how do you process it? Let's take some examples. So middleman, so to say, marketplace, not only can, but should do that kind of supplier vetting.
Must have been some interesting stories getting a chance to tour around and see some of these facilities.
Yes, the lots of stories, but maybe they are for suppliers to tell. I think we have plenty of our own interesting stories in Molport. So, for example, if I can tell a story, for example, so we launch a website, and what happens when you launch a website? You're very happy, you are very excited, you tell all your friends or your relatives, etc. And then once that traffic goes away, you have zero traffic, essentially, right? We were kind of at this situation that we had launched the website, we have zero traffic, and our kind of mode of growth was a lot of word of mouth traffic, but that is slow, that is too slow to kind of have meaningful traffic. So we kind of looked at options, and one of the options was Google AdWords. And we talked with marketing agency about how it's done. And they say, well, you pick 10 to 100 keywords, carefully research. You'd make 3 to 5 maybe pages, maybe 10 pages for optimized for keywords. And that's how it goes. They would be search engine optimized. They would go organic traffic, and you also would buy traffic to them. And I was thinking, yeah, that sounds interesting, but we have millions of molecules in our database. Each molecule has a unique name. Can I advertise that? And the agency said, no, that's not how it's done. You might advertise few hundred, maybe some accounts have been extended to a few thousand keywords, but that's the limit, and I thought about it, but that's really high intent traffic. The keywords for common searches were very popular and very expensive. Even then, $5-10 per keyword. And our website is not optimized yet. We just launched it. So conversion is absolutely horrible. And it's also horrible because nobody knows us. The orders are thousands of dollars. You don't trust thousands of dollars orders to someone you don't know. So we get some traffic potentially, but it doesn't convert. And paying $10 per click doesn't make sense anyway, right? So, but there is no competition for these long tail keywords. I spent some time with Google AdWords support, explained the situation that this is not keyword spamming, that really every page that would be linked from a keyword is a different page, has lists, unique products. And after some back and forth, they said, okay, how many keywords do you need? I said, it's the wildest that I could dream of. 100,000. A couple days it was silent. They come back. Well, we gave your account 500,000 keywords. So all of a sudden I have something that nobody has, right? I have 500,000 possible keywords to advertise. So we went through the database. At that time, next ads on Google, headline was 25 characters, text line was 35 characters. So I filtered from the database all compounds that have up to 35 characters, name, length. Had a huge Excel where I managed this, and you worked with that. And it worked like a charm. It was, there were some keywords that clearly were active that we didn't expect to be active, but they were expensive, so we didn't bid on those. There was a long tail of keywords that only gave maybe 1 to 2 clicks per year, not per month. And there
It's
were
a
some
very
that,
long tail.
but if you have, yes, you get 1 click per year, but somebody is actually searching to buy it usually.
Mm-hmm.
What we found, it's hundreds of thousands of such products. So it was very cost efficient traffic. And the best thing is that everyone could see what we do. Everyone could analyze what we do, but probably nobody understood what we were doing. So we did this for years till Google changed their algorithms. So that's scrappy growth.
Mm-hmm. Is this the source of your very first customers, or were those kind of the hand-to-hand combat ones that you were going manually to the folks that were buying these?
That was one of the first sources of the customers. We did similar thing to get, at one point we had nearly 50 million unique molecules indexed by Google organic traffic. So and nobody was doing that because marketing agencies said that that is not possible. Maybe Times or Amazon can do that. You can't do that. Well, we had to try, right? I mean,
Of course.
that's how you get the advantage. Everyone thinks things work this way, and if you believe that, what advantage do you have? You only, if you are a startup, you have to try things that everyone thinks are not possible, right? And some of them actually will work out. So for us, yes, we were generating, first of all, from referral, because whoever would try the service really liked us and stayed for us essentially forever. And also through these kind of growth hacks.
So Google gives you access to 500,000 that you can now advertise. What was your first significant Google AdWords bill like? Was it like 8 cents, 12 cents, or like a couple hundred? Do you remember that first like big one that you got?
Actually, Molport for most of the time was bootstrapped. We were growing slowly. Actually, in our market, what works really well is visiting events and conferences, but they cost 5 to 10,000 with travel to one conference. And I also give clients in 6, 9, 12 months. We couldn't afford that, so we had to be scrappy, so to say. We had to be cheap and get clients that are closer to the intent, and those that searched were closer. We didn't have to have huge traffic or a huge bill. Imagine that we have 1 to 5 cents per click, and then thousands, maybe tens of thousands clicks. It's still cheap, right? Relatively. And those are much closer to placing an order than through some other means.
As a bootstrap business, it must have been pretty interesting seeing the limitlessness of this giant Google ad machine that you can now dump money into.
Yes. All opportunities are for limited time, essentially. Algorithms change, competition catches up. So you have to take advantage of when it's possible. This was unfortunately in the middle of financial crisis. So we had started operating, we had some sales, we had an IT team, a small building, the product, but to get investment in 2008, 2009 in Europe, forget it. So unfortunately, we used this as much as we could, but we couldn't pour a lot of money into that, so take maximum advantage. And at that time also, I think behavior changes. It was kind of interesting time in history when universities gave researchers credit cards to make orders, to simplify ordering. So professors, as a postdoc, I had a credit card. I could place credit card orders. So they could, in a way, bypass procurement procedures in some ways. And we launched Molport into this at the tail of that trend, because very soon, procurement took over reins again. and
Hmm.
credit card orders disappeared. But it's important when you launch. It's important to understand behavior at that time and take advantage of that. So unfortunately, as a bootstrap company, we couldn't take full advantage of what we discovered.
Mm, fair. And at this point, were you still based in like Excel, or had you start building the software yet?
We were building the marketplace platform from very beginning, but people would place would use that like a catalog and maybe place small orders. But through referral, we had these clients that placed in one order thousands of products. Those are larger orders, and
Mhm.
those don't happen through essentially marketplace. They're you quote, somebody on their side reviews, approves the quote, places an order. So these two distinct channels.
And so, at what point did the online orders, that marketplace orders, kind of take over the large orders by hand, or did it always kind of, was it
It
more of a lead source for you?
it is a lead source. There are online orders, of course. It's easy. There are now punch out integrations that someone can from their SAP Ariba dashboard go to our catalog and place orders, and they are brought in automatically into the Ariba system. Procurement love that
Mhm.
because they don't have to do any data entry, and that is kind of another way how friction is removed. But of course, there are always orders that require manual touch as well. Not everything is done online. Larger contracts are offline, and they sometimes involve actually signing a contract.
And so, your first customers, very first customers, came from you all reaching out to folks that were buying chemicals. Then the kind of next tranche came from this Google Ads hack that you managed to find. Where did the kind of next phase of growth in customers come from?
For a long time, that was it. For a long time, that is what we could afford. And that was actually enough to grow for many years
Hmm.
with the 40% year-over-year growth. And 40% is actually not so trivial. I don't know how these companies like Lovable and others manage when they explode so quickly. So essentially, it's difficult. You have a system set up now, and essentially those systems will be obsolete in 3 years. To get systems that would work for what the volume will be in 3 years, they're way too expensive for you now. So you kind of have to you have to move gradually, improve. You grow out of them, you improve again, you grow out. So some struggles, but those for long time were fueling the growth, referral, and these hacks. But of course, in science, also every industry has their own kind of unique ways how to market, so to say. In science, scientists are very skeptical, but they also are very generous. When they do experiments, they list where they bought reagents in the
Hmm,
scientific paper. So that's a
really?
free content marketing. Scientists write up their experimental procedures and they publish that they bought reagents from this supplier, from that supplier. So that helped, and also, of course, conferences.
Talk to me about the moment where you realized, hey, we've got something here. We would feel like we have product market fit. There's customers, we have a model, we're able to supply those customers. Like when did that finally click for you?
I've read these stories that at some point, you're kind of pushing the boulder up the hill, and sometimes,
Hmm.
it's hard work, and then after some time, it starts to roll down the hill. You have to run after that. I don't think we ever had it ever so easy. It was becoming easier and easier in a way, but I think in a bootstrapped company, especially in the initial years, it's never so quick. So I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that.
I always felt like in the early days, it was like having a toddler where like it doesn't know it's trying to kill itself, but it's trying to kill itself. And you would always see it kind of like running at the wall socket with a fork. Be like, I'm going to stick this over here. When did it stop being less chaotic and start feeling more like a company? Or was it always toddler with a fork running at the electrical socket?
I think it was around 1 million revenue. I think it's a kind of a typical benchmark also here from
Mhm.
other companies. We saw that, hey, this is kind of going really well and we could do more business if we would invest in more in sales. And we were happy to hire our first key account manager. And we didn't have sales as such. We were more working with inbound on the existing clients by growing accounts essentially. So we tested this idea that we would hire a dedicated person to nurture the largest clients. They could hunt a bit as well, but the main purpose was actually existing clients. And it worked really well. Quentin was our first key account manager. Deeply thankful that he joined the team. He paved the way. He showed that it can be done, and we closely watched how he was doing. And very shortly, maybe a year after that, we saw, hey, it works. So we hired 3 more and gave
Mm.
the same work to do essentially, and it worked. So essentially, seeing that you can do the workload, hiring a person who works with you closely takes over your accounts first. So you teach
Mhm.
how to do it. Probably I should have had better documented systems, better explain where we get the clients and
Mm.
how. In retrospect, it's always hindsight vision is always 2020. So those things that kind of were left unsaid, undocumented, later on did create maybe some misunderstandings and friction, but that's how we did it essentially.
Fair enough. I mean, onboarding those first couple of reps, I remember it's sort of like water skiing where you're just kind of, you don't have any skis yet. You're just kind of hanging onto the rope and the boat is just flying. And then you have to kind of find a way to pull yourself up and like learn to ski from that position, which is extremely hard. And very few people are able to figure it out. And I just remember being so consumed by everything else that even though I knew how to sell and I knew what a pain it was to learn, I think I didn't quite give my new AE the attention because I was like, I finally have stood up. We're in the water. We're kind of actually skiing now. And like, I'm looking around like there's so much to do. And I didn't give my AE nearly enough attention.
And it's also important, who do you hire as a first
Mm.
rep. I think we were lucky. He actually had account management and sales experience. But if you actually hire someone with a lot of experience, they will want to do sales, account management the way they've done it before, that has worked for them. And they will come to you. So you don't have any processes. You don't know what you are doing. You don't even have a CRM. We didn't have a CRM back then yet. So you just Excel. So you don't know what you are doing. Let me show you how it's done. And, that's how you can actually lose it, because what they will do might not actually work for your clients. So we were lucky to have a person with experience, but also willing to listen and willing to learn what we were doing, curious, I should say. So
Since that moment, you're no longer, if we kind of fast forward a little bit, you're no longer with Molport. Can you talk to me about kind of the decision and that kind of looking in the mirror moment you had?
yeah, bootstrapping, growing slowly comes with its own territory, essentially. The consensus is you make a startup, you work for 2-3 years, no weekends, 12 hours a day, etc. Well, maybe you can do that for a couple years, but you certainly can't do it for 18 years. For me, we hit, as everyone else, the COVID crisis, and as you imagine, that we had a lab actually that repackages compounds. Logistics, they have to work in office. You can't do it from home. And so we survived that. Then came the war. We had suppliers in Ukraine and Russia. So Ukrainians couldn't ship Russian compounds. Nobody wanted to buy. At the same time, also, there was a lockdown in China for 2 months. So imagine having a business with nothing to sell and salaries. And there were some other stuff going on as well. So essentially, it was 4 hard years um, for me at the end of the Molport, so to say, and I burned out. And I every year asked myself in the beginning of the year, am I still the best person to lead this company? What is right for the customers? I have my shares already, Can I, work well and increase the share value for everyone? Or actually somebody can do that. 2 years ago, essentially, for me, the answer was that I didn't feel I was the best at that time to lead. And I was very fortunate. My co-founder was experienced serial entrepreneur.